1, 2, 3, 4. When I was young, I had a lot to say. So I learned how to sing, I learned how to play. You said you were mine when you heard my song. After all these years, you still sing along. The first time, the best time, the good times to come. Those three things we'll never forget.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening for another wonderful episode of Three Things. My name is Maria Belcher, and I'm the Executive Director at FestivALL Charleston, and it is my pleasure to welcome you again to a virtual episode of Three Things. We are on Season 5, Episode 4, our third virtual episode of the season. And I'd like to take a moment to thank our generous sponsors and season ticket holders who have helped ensure that this program continues even in this virtual format. West Virginia Public Broadcasting, Farmer Cline and Campbell, University of Charleston, MVB Bank, Taylor Books, and the Charleston Convention and Visitors Bureau. Thank you all so very much. We have a wonderful lineup of guests this evening, and I know that you are just as excited to hear from the three of them as we are here. And before I hand things off to Mr. Jeff Shirley, the producer and founder of the Three Things program, I want to make a quick announcement. We do have the full schedule of FestivALL events that will be released on Monday, September 21st, so just a few days from now. So be on the lookout. Check out festivallcharleston.com for a full schedule of virtual and at-home programming as we work to turn the season into a work of art. We hope that you'll enjoy some reimagined festive fall favorites, in addition to all of the exciting new programming that FestivALL and our partner organizations and artists have put together for you to enjoy. But without further ado, I will now bring onto the virtual stage Mr. Jeff Shirley. Take it away, Jeff.
Thank you, Maria, and thank you for joining us for Season 5, Episode 4, and our third virtual episode of Three Things, my first, my favorite, my future. It's a storytelling series that we'll have three professionals get up and tell us a little bit about their careers and their lives using the theme of first, favorite, and future. And by that, we hope to sort of discover how they got started, what they love about what they do, and where they would like to take their career in the future. I don't give my guests a whole lot of instruction, and that is by design. I find that the different approaches to the same task can often keep the show an interesting and fun and unique kind of way to hear about people. So before we get started, I want to first thank a few people, Maria and Mallory at FestivALL for helping keeping this series going. I would like to thank all of my sponsors for their generosity. My technical director, Patrick Stevens, Ian Bodie for drawing the pictures of all of our guests over the 5 seasons, and Lauren Allen for his logo that he provided us in Season 1. Let's get right to our first guest. Up first, we have Claudette Hudson, the owner and operator of T Graphics. It's a graphics printing store in Charleston that prints T-shirts and any other item that you could possibly get a logo or a name on. They've done it. There are very few people in the area that don't have an item printed by T Graphics, whether it's a T-shirt or a cup or a bag or a umbrella or of the many things that they do. So many organizations and sports teams, family reunions, bands, FestivALL, West Virginia Music Hall of Fame, Mountain Stage, they all get their T-shirts printed from Claudette, and making her and her company a big part of their special days or their special organizations, and that's one of the things that is like a common thing with Claudette is that not only does she print the shirts for these organizations, but you often see her out volunteering in town for the same organizations that she helps out. So we're very happy to welcome Claudette Hudson to talk to us about her first, favorite, and future.
I remember when Jeff Shirley first introduced the idea of 3 things to me. I naively said, "Your first, your best, and next? Do polite people even talk about such things, Jeff?" He laughed. We both laughed so hard at the idea that I had completely misunderstood what 3 things was going to be about. And so he gently explained to me that 3 things was about your first, like how you got into your career, then your best, what brings you the most satisfaction, and then what you're going to do next. And so when he actually asked me to participate, I felt extremely honored. So the story of my first is I had an affinity for getting catalogs when I was a little girl. We received, the J.C. Penney's catalog and Spiegel and who knows how many others. And one of my favorite things to do was to cut out paper dolls. I made families out of the people that I saw in the catalogs. And I also would cut out clothes from different pages and make outfits for people. So imagine when I, years later, stumbled into a career at T Graphics, and I thought, wow, I get to do exactly what I started out loving doing as a small child. I get to help people select clothes and help them look their best. It's amazing. It's just like such a natural fit. So when I first realized that, I think it was probably my oldest sister was in junior high at John Adams, and she brought home a red trash can with the word Falcons in white down the side of it. And I thought that trash can was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. I mean, there it was, the school that she was used to going to, the beloved John Adams Falcons, a red trash can with the word Falcons on it. How cool was that? Then when I was in high school, I remember we were designing high school t-shirts. And there was a young man named Pat Murphy, and Pat's father was involved in a business, and forgive me, I don't even remember the name of the business, but basically I was part of the group that helped decide what our senior shirt would look like. And we were the Bulldogs. And so the Bulldogs, everything was black and white. Well, in 1983, we, for whatever reason, decided that black and white really wasn't what we wanted to do. And so we came up with a t-shirt that said "Breaking Free" in 83. And our shirt was a jersey with gold sleeves and a white body. And "Breaking Free" in 83 was our motto. So, even back to those days, I had an interest in what I do currently for a living. So fast forward after stints as a teller and a personal banker and selling insurance and managing a fire protection company, I decided that I wanted to do something creative, and I had the opportunity to join T Graphics. And I don't know if I will ever forget the feeling of, wow, I am home. I have found the thing that I am meant to do. I love it, and there's no greater feeling than being part of people's celebrations, whether it's a birth or a marriage or a graduation or sometimes even a death. We make a difference in people's lives. We help them find a way to commemorate, find a way to celebrate, find a way to, bring joy. And that's really rewarding. So the best. We touch so many lives in so many ways. The best is a little bit of a challenge for me because we have helped with fundraisers for children sadly in need of medical care. We have been so blessed to help so many school teams and bands and fairs and festivals. Well, at least we used to anyway before the COVID. These are different times, but so many in our community are really striving to find ways to continue their mission of celebrating, whether it's at home or in smaller groups. And so the need continues. The best is, it's really, it's extremely hard. I mean, it really is. I do remember that one of my favorite things that we ever did was for a group of Honda motorcycle owners. It was the Honda Motorcycle Owners Association. And I read in the paper that they were coming to Charleston, West Virginia. And so I reached out to them and sold them on the idea that T Graphics was only, a hop, skip, and a jump across the Elk River from their venue, this Charleston Civic Center, now the Charleston Convention Center, and that we provided world-class embroidery and screen printing, and that so basically I sold them on the idea that rather than importing the items that they were to give out to their members or sell to their members while they were in town, that they would buy locally. And that was, in those days, a lot of money. I mean, it was if memory serves me, close to $25,000 order. And we took great pride knowing that people from all over the United States would be wearing and using the items that we made at T Graphics. Another event that I'm extremely proud of, besides all the local things that we do, I mean, we do get to participate in so many things locally, and we're very grateful for that. But another thing that stands out in my mind as one that was a distinct honor is for the International Master Gardeners Association. Now, we had help in obtaining that. Dolores Barber, a good friend of T Graphics for many years, she and other local master gardeners who were involved in bringing that group to West Virginia were also very instrumental in introducing T-Graphics to that group and helping us secure the business. And so we're forever grateful to Dolores and the other local master gardeners. But it gave my employees and me and my former business partner, I think my former business partner, I don't want to speak out of turn, but it gave me great pride in knowing that people were coming to Charleston, West Virginia, from all over the world, and they were participating in the International Master Gardeners Association's meeting here, and that they would leave with hats on their heads that we had embroidered and shirts on their backs that we had screen printed. And when you realize that you are making a difference, not only in this local community by providing good paying, stable jobs, but that the work that your company is doing is also reaching an international community. Yeah, those are some of the best. We're blessed. We're so blessed to do work, as I said, for many, many local organizations, and none should go unmentioned. But those are two I would have to say that make it in the top of the list as far as things that we said, wow, we did that. So next is really challenging for me because I tend to just be present. I really don't focus on the past, and I don't even look too far ahead into the future, because I honestly believe that what we have is right now. We can only affect right now. We can only make changes right now. So next, when you ask me what is next, that presents a real challenge. Anyone who knows me knows that I frequently say the only thing constant is change. And I believe that wholeheartedly. The only thing constant really is change. And the sooner we embrace that and accept it and roll with it, the better off we all are. Whether it's personal life or business life, accepting that something's always going to be changing is super important. So COVID certainly has delivered its share of changes. It's asked the small business owners, especially like myself, to survive extraordinary circumstances. I mean, circumstances that in my 22-year history I've never ever seen the kind of instant, stressful change that we saw this early spring. Now, with that said, we are blessed. We are truly blessed in that we were able to keep working, and we continue to serve clients. We have clients that are emergency workers, we have hospitals, we have doctors' offices, we provide uniforms for police and fire departments. So we were blessed in that we did still have some business. So what is next for me and my company is that we are going to move more towards an online platform. We will always be interested in providing personal customer service. So we welcome people to the showroom and to our offices, and we will always want to do that. But life circumstances are pushing us, and especially me, to make decisions and to move into what to some people might just seem second nature, but to me it's a little challenging because, again, I think I may have said it in the first or maybe in the best, we consider what we do very personal. We consider when you bring a project to us, we treat it like your family. We treat your project like it's the only project we have to work on, even if we're working on 65 others at the same time. It's a little challenging to think about going just strictly to a web-based business. But we are going to try to incorporate that and have the opportunity for fundraising to happen electronically through our website for customers and company stores, and so there's a lot of exciting opportunities that are heading our way, and we are looking forward to the next chapter. So I thank you very much for your time and for your attention, and thanks so much to Jeff Shirley again for asking me. It's a great honor, and I wish you and yours the very best as we all continue to just reach for what we can within these challenging times, and just stay on the sunny side.
Thank you, Claudette, and I'm glad we talked about the title of the show before we had you make your video. Next up, we have attorney Catherine Kitty Dooley of the Dooley Law Firm here in Charleston. She's a native of Fairmont, West Virginia, a graduate of Marshall University and then West Virginia University College of Law. And in between those two degrees, she served in the U.S. Army as a captain in military intelligence. She has served on a number of boards throughout the state of West Virginia and has won countless awards for her work and her career. Most recently, she has been named the Elizabeth Mason Hardin Gilmore Diversity, Equality, and Inclusion Award winner by the West Virginia Women's Commission. So please welcome, to talk about her first, favorite, and future, attorney, Miss Kitty Dooley.
Hi, I'm Kitty Dooley, and it's an honor to have been asked by Jeff Shirley to discuss with you my first, my favorite, and my future. For my first, I want to discuss how I came to want to be an attorney. In 1970 or so, I was living in my hometown of Fairmont, West Virginia, and there was some social uprising with regard to racial justice in our community, and the local citizens had been coming together to protest and ask for equal opportunities in employment and representation in city council and other initiatives. And around that time, some people who were part of the protesters had been arrested for what were deemed criminal activities. And there was a young professor at West Virginia University, and his arrival at WVU and North Central West Virginia brought about a change that even a young 12-year-old could see. Frank Cleckley, and at that time, folks in our community just simply referred to him as Cleckley. And as the men of the community came together to support the young man who had been charged, they had a meeting, and that meeting was at our house. And I recall knowing that Professor Cleckley would be there, and I kind of hung out around the outside steps until he came. And as I sat there on the ground on the side of the steps, I saw him emerge, and I just kind of watched him as he walked up the steps. And then I found myself in our dining room where the men sat and met, kind of hanging out in the adjacent living room, eavesdropping on their conversation. And that was a time when kids were told to stay out of grown folks' conversations. And I was on the side kind of listening to the strategies that they were putting together in order to have this young man bailed out and to move forward with initiatives around racial justice in our community. And when the case against this young man was brought to trial, my father got me out of school and took me to the courtroom. And to be perfectly honest, I don't know how that happened. I must have mentioned to my father that I wanted to go for some portion of the trial. And so I took an aisle seat in the courthouse in Marion County. And it's one of these old, immaculate ceremonial courtrooms. But I sat there in the aisle and watched Professor Cleckley just own that courtroom. It was like he was walking around his living room, as folks say in the profession. And at one point, young jurist Fred Fox, whom some of you may know, he was young at that point in the early 70s, but he served as one of the longest serving jurists in the state of West Virginia. But Judge Fox made an evidentiary ruling, and then he looked over to Professor Cleckley and he said, "Is that correct?" And the defense attorney actually indicated to Judge Fox that his evidentiary ruling was in fact correct. And that was the moment that I determined that I wanted to be a lawyer. And what's so important about that is, as an impressionable 12-year-old, I saw someone who, while not a female, was African American, someone who had served in the military, someone who was a professor at the College of Law, and someone who could not just ably, but expertly litigate and advocate on behalf of a client. And seeing Professor Cleckley operate in that courtroom on that day gave me a vision that I could do the same. And for the past 30 years, that's what I've been trying to do, and not saying that I do it as well as he, but that was certainly my first time visualizing that I, in fact, could be an attorney. Now, my favorite, as I just indicated, knew that I wanted to be an attorney from early on. And I graduated from undergraduate at Marshall in 1980. And having gone through 4 years of ROTC, I knew that I would be going directly into the military after that time. And my plan really was to try to get out of West Virginia, see the world. And the military was my opportunity to both serve our country as well as to see some of the world. And I ended up serving for 4.5 years, going to Korea, almost all over the United States. But I ended up getting out of the military in 1985 in Central California. We had been stationed at Fort Ord, right there in Monterey, and I took a job in sales, and subsequently we moved to the San Francisco Bay Area, and I was working in sales. And I was out on my route one day, and I started thinking intently about how we were going to have a plan to attend law school, because the cost of living in California, as one might well imagine, was very expensive. And I knew that if I pursued law in California, that most likely I would have to do it on a part-time basis. And that was fairly common at the time. But I came up with a plan, and I called my husband from work, and I said to him, I'm ready to go to law school. And when he came home from work that day, I laid out a plan for us to return to West Virginia, where we could live modestly and relatively inexpensively. He could complete his master's degree, and then I could pursue my desire to complete law school and to become a lawyer. And on Valentine's Day, February 14th of 1987, we packed up everything that we owned in a U-Haul, and we attached a trailer to pull our car. We sold the car that we had, another car that we had, and we moved back to West Virginia in order to pursue my almost lifelong desire to become an attorney. And in law school, it's interesting. At that time, I know it's different now, they would give the students their grades early into the second semester. And there was a time where all the fresh or first year students would hang out in the hallway until their grades were available. So I, in early January of what would have been 1988, hung out with everybody else in the hallway to get my grades. And people were opening their first semester grades, and some people were ecstatic, some people were crying, some people were just freaking out. And because I wasn't a traditional student, I just said to myself, after witnessing some of the things that I had, I said, I'm going home to open my grades. I am not in any way, shape, or form going to have an emotional breakdown in the College of Law. So that's what I did. I went home, and my husband was there, and I told him that I had my first semester grades. And we opened the grades, and I had done fairly well. We were excited and we were happy, and my husband looked at the grades to ensure that what I had reported was in fact correct. And of course we embraced and smiled and jumped around the living room and had a great time with that. Then he looked at me and he said, "Wow, Kitty, I didn't know that you could get through law school." And I said to him in that moment, I said, "So you're telling me that you packed up everything that we owned, you quit a good paying job and allowed me to do the same, put everything on a U-Haul and drove almost 3,000 miles back to West Virginia, and you weren't even sure that I could make it through law school?" And I think he was a little embarrassed that he said it. But then I said to him, "Boy, you must love me a lot to do that even amidst your doubts." And so I just love that story because everything is about perspective. And I think I could have been disappointed and in the moment just said, "I can't believe you don't believe in me." But the truth of the matter is that he believed in me so much that he pushed aside any doubts that he might have had about my personal abilities to succeed and for that, I think I'm better, our marriage is better, and it certainly has been the wind beneath my wings from that time to this time. Now, my future. I completed law school in 1990, 10 years after completing my undergraduate work, and have been working in the law since that time. And I have loved it and loved the opportunity to help people and their families, and to understand and learn their stories, and to share those stories in an effort to get them some semblance of justice. But in 2015, I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And to be perfectly honest, I didn't think that I would be here 1 year after that, let alone coming up on 5 years. And so after being diagnosed and seeking treatment for that, and finding that my life has been spared, I believe that I must walk in even greater purpose now than what I did before. And so at this point in my career, while I'm still practicing some, I really have devoted this time in my life to social justice, racial justice, and equity inclusion for people who look like me. And those efforts have been really kind of solidified in my work with YWCA, racial justice, and efforts that we have undertaken to develop both implicit bias training and to speak to people about racial inequality and injustice, how and why it has manifested in this country from a historical standpoint and basis, really looking at history that is largely untaught in our public school systems in West Virginia, and then to discuss how we can be introspective to make changes in our personal lives based on things that we have been taught and mores in our society. And so as I walk in that purpose, I really believe that that's why I have been spared, and I'm devoting a lot of my time these days to that effort, speaking about it, talking to diverse groups, speaking to individuals, and then hoping to spread around the history that, as I said, we have not been taught. So I believe that that's my most near-term future. And ultimately, as I tell everyone and they laugh, is that I want to be a beach bum. And I'm working hard to try to get to that point. I love the ocean, I love the water, and it's just, I believe the magnificence of God can be seen at the ocean and in the waves and the movement of the tides. So that's my future. I look forward to it, and I'm certain you look forward to yours. All the best, and Godspeed.
Thank you, Kitty, and we are truly honored to have you as a guest on our show tonight. Finally, this evening, we have songwriter, producer, and musician Jeff Stevens. He grew up, born and raised in Alum Creek, West Virginia, and then relocated to Nashville, where he's been successful for decades, writing 30 number one songs for artists such as Alabama, George Strait, John Anderson. He has produced all and written much of Luke Bryan's songs, the country superstar Luke Bryan, and together they won Album of the Decade a couple years ago. And I first met Jeff when I was assisting on an interview in Nashville for a West Virginia Music Hall of Fame project, and we had interviewed him down there in Nashville, and the way he spoke about his career and songwriting and just music just made me an instant lifelong fan of him, personally and professionally. And so I've talked to him over the years about being a guest when we had the live show, and it was always, a little difficult to get him to come out just for that. So we're very happy that he agreed to do this now virtually. So I'm very excited to introduce a songwriter, producer, and musician to tell us about his first, favorite, and future, Mr. Jeff Stevens.
All right, I'm doing one of my favorite things, playing a guitar and drinking coffee. Yeah, at the same time, that'll blow your head off. This is a fun thing here. 3 things. First, favorite, and future. Yes. Well, the first day I took a breath was June 15th, 1959. That would be a first. And I was born in McMillan Hospital in Charleston. Apparently, one of my favorite songs when I was very young, 3 years old, maybe 4 years old, was How Great Thou Art. I ran around singing it all the time. I'm glad we had no tape recorders in the house back then. Well, my first guitar was brought to me by Santa Claus in 1968. I actually brought one for my brother Warren and one for me. And they were Stella Harmonies. Mom told me later that Santa Claus paid $30 a piece for them at Galprin's. Some of y'all may remember that. They didn't have cases for them, so she went over to Herbert and bought a couple of chipboard cases for them. And we started taking lessons right then, probably in January of '69. And our first lessons were taught by none other than Bob Thompson. We would go in and we were learning the basic little, I guess, songs. We were kind of learning how to read music and playing little polkas together. It was me and Warren taking lessons together. So we ended up kind of playing together. And I remember one day my dad walked in, and my dad was always had big ideas and was a promoted all kinds of things, and he walked in and he said it wasn't Bob that day, it was somebody else teaching us, but he walked in that day. My dad walked into the lessons there and he said, "Buddy, if these boys ain't playing Folsom Prison Blues by next week, we're out of here." And so he taught us Folsom Prison Blues that day, and we struggled to learn it, but we learned it, and you know what? It wasn't that long that we were out of there anyway, because we didn't have very little patience for music lessons, and my dad certainly didn't have any patience for it. The first show that I ever did, or we ever did, me and my brother Warren, we played a talent show over in Duval High School in Griffithsville and in Lincoln County, And it was a big deal, you know, in those days. That would have probably been, I guess, around 1970 or so. And it was a 2-night affair, all kinds of people doing all kinds of things, like 2 hours each night, something like that, you know. And I mean, I remember a fellow riding a unicycle, man, he drove the crowd wild, you know, and there was a rock band and other singers and adults and, you know, adults and children and just anybody who thought they had a little talent, you know. And my mother had sewn these kind of sparkly country and western suits up for me. And of course we played Folsom Prison Blues. Yeah, my favorite cheeseburger is at Brown's in Nashville. It's like an old streetcar or something. It's about I don't know, the streetcars could be 100 years old, I don't know, but I know they've been making cheeseburgers there a long, long time. There's kind of a shack tied onto the side of it, tacked up to it, and everybody goes in there for lunch, you know, get a cheeseburger, Pepsi, fries. Everybody kind of gets the same thing because it's so good. Occasionally, you know, a beer. You see somebody drinking a beer with their cheeseburger for lunch. I've done that a time or two. Well, the first job I ever got, first real job, I mean, when I was a kid, you know, I'd run around to all the neighbors and try to do something for a quarter, you know, or 50 cents or whatever they'd throw at me, you know. But my first job, I saw an ad in the paper for a job at Kmart on Patrick Street, and I went and applied for that job, and a lady gave me the job, and she told me that I'd be doing some cleanup work, basically, you know, and she took me all the way back to the boiler room, you know, back past the time clock and all that, you know, back into the bowels of the building. And there was a mop bucket there with wheels on it, you know, and a big old nasty mop and a broom, of course. And she said, now, Jeff, the employees here go by certain numbers. And when they hear their number over the intercom, then they know that we're speaking to them. And she said, your number will be 700. I went, okay. And she said, now here's a mop, and here's the broom. And if you hear 700 over the loudspeaker, if you hear 700 code M, that means mop. Or if it's code B, it's broom. So I thought, very good. And she told me a couple other things, and before we left that area, she said one more time, she said, now remember, code M is for mop. Code B is for broom. You know, I was 17 years old. I took it serious, you know. I mean, it's like I would hear 700 code M, and no matter where I was in the store, I would dash like a fireman to go get that mop. And of course, it's on wheels. So I'm like, and I'm running through the store to clean up whatever mess somebody had made. And there was some pretty awful stuff to clean up. One of my favorite things that I like to do is read, and love to read biographies. I'm real big on music biographies, you know, rock and country, blues. Reading one right now, which I've actually read before, on Woody Guthrie, and the title of the book is Woody Guthrie, A Life. And wow, what a life he had. One of my favorite books is by Don Miguel Ruiz. It's called The Four Agreements, along with biographies and those kinds of things. I don't really read much fiction, but I read a lot of self-help books. I feel like I need a lot of help, you know. Well, the first girl I kissed, I married. A few years later, after that, Sandy and I have been married for 40 some years. We've been through all of it, as you might guess, the highs and the lows, and it's been a wonderful, wonderful life together. One of my favorite things that I do is daydreaming. I mean, it's just part of what I do, and it's where my song ideas come from, and along with listening and watching, sort of using my head for an antenna. I take these things that I see and hear and experience and take them in, and somehow, sooner or later, a solid song idea pops out. And so it's, daydreaming in that way has kept me alive. It's one of the ways, it's the main way that I earn a living. So I can remember as a child people saying, he's daydreaming, stop doing that and focus, Okay, didn't work for me. The first time I drove down Music Row, and I found out later on that Music Row, there's two one-way streets, basically, 16th and 17th. And there's lots of tourists and lots of people there for the first time, and they're one-way streets. So there are lots of fender benders out there, sometimes even a little more serious, but lots of fender benders. Well, I didn't know that. I was 16 years old in 1975, and we had won a talent contest that took us to Columbia Studios in Nashville. Basically, it was an audition, really. Now, I have to say that we were too young. We really weren't ready at all. And we drove down to Nashville in our van and a Monte Carlo that Dad loaned me. And it was me and my brother and my band. It was 5 of us. And the first thing I do, we get out of there at the hotel, and I go, boys, let's get in the car and go see what Music Row's all about. And I take off down Music Row, and just right off the bat, whap, I sideswipe a lady. And I mean, my first drive down Music Row. Well, the Music Row was full of old houses back then. There were businesses, music businesses in there. And I know somebody yelled out the door, I just called the cops, they're coming. The lady wasn't hurt, and we weren't hurt, but I'd wrecked her car, I wrecked my dad's car. I was 16 years old. And so, the cop pulls up, and the first thing he asks is your driver's license. And I'm like, string bean on hee-haw, heart. I couldn't find it. It wasn't on me, and it wasn't in the car. So he said, well, son, I don't know who you are, and it is city ordinance that I have to take you in to discover who you are, unless you can produce your driver's license. So he puts me in the back of the car. I'm like going, but tomorrow we got something with Columbia Records, and we're supposed to be, he'd done heard all that stuff before. He didn't care nothing about it. And so my partner, my writing partner, Terry Dotson, our drummer, Terry's 3 years older than me. And so he had a little bit of a wits about him. And he asked the policeman, he said, would you mind on your way in? He said, our hotel is on the way, downtown where you're taking him. Would you mind if we pulled in there and tried to find his driver's license? And he was, the policeman did not want to take me in, And he said, sure. So he followed, the cop followed us there to the Hall of Fame Motor Inn there right on Music Row. And my buddies dug through the van and found my license. And the cop wrote me a ticket, of course, and let me go. So I almost got arrested my first trip down Music Row. My favorite pie, I can't get anymore. My grandmother, Daisy, on my dad's side, she had this tree in the backyard, an apple tree, that yielded these early transparent apples. You know, every now and then make an apple pie that I've never tasted anything like that since. Probably didn't hurt none that it was my grandmother making it. Oh yes, the future. The future will bring changes. And I love change. I've rolled with it my whole life. But I won't say that sometimes it's not scary, but it's kind of like a roller coaster, huh? You know? So I ride the roller coaster. I have been stumbling through my career and my life all these years. Literally, honestly, I feel like I've stumbled from one thing into another and then stumbled into another thing. So as far as the future goes, I'm going to stumble right on into it. And, I'm thinking, that if I don't have any expectations on what should be happening, something really cool could come up. And I believe that it will. I do. Well, I'm going to leave you with a song. It's the best thing that I know how to do. And this is a song I wrote about a year and a half ago with Alan Shamblin. It's a friend of mine. And peace and love. The world is changing fast, my friend. Every day something blows your mind. Trouble and dust is on the wind. We're gonna need each other to survive. Hand in hand, eye to eye. Reach a little higher, grow a little nearer. Walk with one another, learn to let it be. Love when you don't have to. Put yourself in their shoes. Pray a little harder. We're closer than you think. Reach. Oh, reach. I'm just a traveler in this time, on this well-ridden road, searching for some common ground, where seeds of love and hope can grow. The valley is deep, and the stakes are high. Reach a little higher, grow a little nearer, walk with one another, learn to let it be. Love when you don't have to. Put yourself in their shoes. Pray a little harder. We're closer than you think. Reach. Oh, reach. Reach for the truth. Reach for a tear. Reach for the reason God put you here. Listen for a melody. Look for the rhyme, and write like a writer who's running out of time. Reach for a brush, reach for a canvas, paint for the ones who cry, no one understands us. Reach a little higher, grow a little nearer, walk with one another, learn to let it be. Love when you don't have to, put yourself in their shoes, pray a little harder, we're closer than you think.
Thank you so much for that, Jeff, and thanks for being part of the Three Things family. I want to thank all of my guests, Claudette, Kitty, and Jeff, for their time and their stories. I want to thank my sponsors and my team at FestivALL, but most importantly, I want to thank you for joining us for this episode of Three Things. We hope to see you next time, and we'll be announcing those guests very soon, so keep your eye out. Thanks again.
1, 2, 3, 4. When I was young, I had a lot to say. So I learned how to sing, I learned how to play. You said you were mine when you heard my song. After all these years, you still sing